Hey everyone, welcome to Scouting Sessions episode 13. I'm Jérôme Bérubé. I'm joined as always by Brad Allen, and this week we have our first guest, Brad, our WHL scout, J.Brad Johnston. Hey J.Brad, how's it going?
I'm doing good, guys. How are you doing?
We're doing good. Brad, how was your week?
Yeah, I honestly just trying not to over scout that little prospect challenge and event. I'm glad it was 2 games, but I wish it was definitely 3 or 4. And can we please make it the USHL? Why does it have to be the program? What are we doing? Come on, make it the USHL so we can get a couple of extra players in there like regularly. I think that would make sure that if it's a weaker program, then we don't end up with a situation where it's going to be too one-sided, which was obviously the case at this event.
Well, I would much prefer seeing some NCAA guys there than, USHL is fine, but getting James Haggins in there would have been pretty cool. Logan Ensler, another one, and they all are former NTDP players, so that would have been a good fit for them. But maybe in the future years we'll see. Who knows? We don't even know what's going to happen with the USHL in the future. In the program, so there's a lot of things changing. So let's wait and see. So we got J.Brad on this week. We're going to talk about some WHL prospect. J.Brad is based in Calgary. We're going to talk about 6 players that J.Brad choose. So I guess we can start, guys, with our first player we're going to talk about. Funny enough, me and J.Brad were texting about him today. Lynden Lakovic from Moose Jaw. So Moose Jaw just traded Braeden Cootes today. So that was a discussion point we had all year, seeing how is this kid gonna do without Cootes on his team? Not really a good team, obviously. They are in the rebuilding after reaching the Mem Cup last season. So J.Brad, I'll start with you. Maybe give your thoughts on Lakovic this year so far, and maybe your general sense on his play and his upside.
Absolutely. So Lakovic, another guy, wonderful skater. I think that's the first thing we notice about him. He obviously has a really good frame, 6'4". Either at 200 or getting over 200 pounds. He'll be playing over 200 pounds for sure. Very fluid stride. He picks up speed well. And I was at one of the CHL prospect games, and you could tell turning out of contact is a really big plus for him. He did it multiple times in the offensive zone to evade contact, and then uses his vision really well coming out of that to find open players. Playmaking, he's more of a playmaker than a scorer. We'll touch on that a little bit in a sec, but definitely has that vision. Coming up ice, he's always got his head up, always looking for that pass option. The scoring, that's really one of the downsides of his game, really, is his finishing, where he's not finishing very well. And again, you touched on Braeden Cootes going. We're going to look at really see how good he is now at finishing with not really much of a supporting cast there for him. So with Lakovic, a prospect for me. He's my third guy off my list, Carter Bear being 1, McQueen being 2. Lakovic falls in that third, and really why is the finishing and how he can get to the next level is finishing on that opportunities. He's got a lot of 2-on-1s. He's had a lot of breakaways, and he hasn't converted a lot. He's got NHL size. He's got NHL frame. He makes those heads up plays and really solid in transition as a rush attacker. But getting more of those goals, we've seen it throughout the year. There's been a couple times on the rush or in the slot where he's let off a good shot and got those goals, but they haven't come as much as they should have. And now we're in a situation where he doesn't have as much help. So we're going to see really what the kid's made of going forward now.
Brad, if you want to maybe chime in here a bit on Lakovic.
Sure, he is incredibly dangerous prospect for us because he is super talented. He has soft hands. To what J.Brad said, very good playmaker, can set up options on the flank, the weak side, sees the ice really well. The issue is that his playmaking get in the way of his inside attacking game. That's where he is not as dominant as he should be. And it's reminding me, I'm going to use a bad name here. It's going to scare people. Pierre Engvall. There was a bit of Pierre Engvall happening here. And Patrick Roy is slowly decaying before our eyes as a result of Pierre Engvall. So it's one of those situations where we really want to see him go to the next gear here and realize how dominant he can be. It's not Oscar Olausson, Ryan Suzuki. Who's the Seattle player they took in the first round recently out of Czechia, who's very similar, Edward Shalit.
Yeah.
Very, very similar player here, where it's like they have a whole lot to offer, but they don't know how to put it together. They don't have the dominance, the tenacity. They don't have the mentality that you typically want to see in a top-end player, but they have the skill set of a top-end player. And that's where things can be very, very, very difficult to assess. So yeah, he's one where, let's put it this way, J.Brad's going to be watching a whole lot of them for us as the season progresses, because he's one where you don't want to get it wrong, because if you do get it wrong, it could look really bad.
Yeah, I'm with you on the lack of play driving from him at times. Just honestly, my first few viewings, I thought this kid looks like a top 10 pick easily, maybe even top 5. But then the more I watched after, more I saw some games where he was not as engaged as much as he should, and he stayed a bit too much on the outside. So that's something we're gonna focus in the second half of the season, see how much progression we can see, because if he does really start competing and start really driving the play, then we have him way too low. So let's move on to the next player, guys. Jackson Smith from Tri-City. J.Brad, I'll let you go on Smith, who is having a pretty good season with the Americans.
Absolutely. And from what I saw in the game, at least in Oshawa, in my opinion, he was the best WHL player on the ice. Later, nice hit behind the net, was really physical. Obviously, a very physical game between Canada and the U.S. There are CHL in the U.S. But with that physicality, he uses it to hold the line in the offensive zone as well, and in his rush defense. So the physicality is a big part of his game, as well as his transition game, too. He transitions the puck up the ice well, but his decision-making at times it leaves a little bit to be desired. I want to see a little bit more hockey sense from him moving forward. Going back to that rush defending, he does stay square to his attacker 1v1, whether that's a one-on-one coming down or 2-on-2. He stays very square to his shooter. He does have some good headman passes as well. So when he is making those decisions coming out of the zone, passes are really crisp, tape to tape, long range, short range. He does really well. But I want him to overcommit a little bit less. Sometimes he'll go up the ice a little bit too quickly himself when he does have better passing options available to him. Although the passing, he can pass through traffic, clean passes. So the skating as well, I do like his skating. I think he skates fairly well. He's got great size. He's got great frame, and good patience as well with his skating. I think he's a guy who, my favorite defenseman out of the dub this year, for sure. I think he has a lot of potential, both in the offensive and defensive game, as a really solid, larger two-way defenseman. So hopefully, as the year progresses, Tri-City can keep using him as much as they can. He gets a decent amount of ice time, and after the trade deadline with the dub, I think he's going to get a lot more, and hopefully that'll showcase a little bit more of his talents. And he can work on that hockey sense a little bit more. He'll keep moving up all the boards.
Yeah, I think the hockey sense, I guess, and consistency has been my two major, not red flag, but my question mark with him. You can watch one game and he's going to look really good, and then you watch the next one and he's fumbling the puck. He's missing, easy passes. Can't move a puck at times. we saw some of that at the prospect game, mostly the game in London. So I think he's going to end up being a frustrating player as for scout, but one that I don't see him moving too down on the list, and I could see him move up a bit. There's some forwards ahead of him that maybe they don't have the greatest upside offensively. So maybe when we're pretty confident that Smith is a top 4D, like you might see him maybe move up on the list. So an interesting defenseman. Not many of them in this draft. There's just not many defensemen. There's Schaefer and then there's like Smith. So Murka and Amico but the top end of the draft is not many defensemen. So I could see this kid go way higher than maybe where we rank him because of a team really needed a defenseman that maybe drafts in the top 10, top 12. I could see that happening. Having said that, I'm pretty sure I said the same thing last year, and all the defensemen went lower in our top 10. So we'll see what happens. But Brad, maybe a few words on Jackson Smith.
Sure. We think he projects more as a power play 2, not a power play 1 option, if he's a power play option at all. But I think he can get there. One thing with his skating ability that kind of makes him unique, and I can't believe I'm using this player as a comp for it, but he does the most 10-2 turns next to Antonio Stranges out of any prospect I can remember. This kid loves his 10-2 skating, but I bring it up because unlike Antonio Stranges, who's like 5'11", $180, this kid's 6'3", 200 pounds. So theoretically, if he gets to the NHL and he incorporates his 10-2 turning, he should be able to actually hold posturally, because if he can stabilize well enough after getting clipped, he can still go through and cut around players with the turning. So that aspect makes him pretty unique in terms of how he sets up and uses attack skating, because it's pretty modern, very new age, but it should work. The other aspect to him is that even though, his hockey sense isn't the best, he does have pretty decent feints to get himself out of trouble. Like he can use exaggerated postural fakes. He'll fake like swing passes and all sorts of other setups to try to give himself a little bit of extra time and space. He can slow down a forecheck to a decent degree. So I'm starting to get more comfortable with the idea of him as an actual top 4. My comp for him is Travis Sanheim. I feel it's pretty decent. It's not like, it's not exactly what he is, but it's in the stylistic realm of what I think he'll end up. Which I know for some of you think is, well, Travis Sanheim's really, really good right now. I think it's one of those situations where developmentally he's gotten pretty lucky here. If it wasn't for John Tortorella, I really don't think he'd be the player he's become right now, or develop into the player he's become. So I think this player could go one of 2 ways. And I actually think I rarely like to say this, I actually think his career will really come down to development. I really do. Where some of these prospects, like it doesn't matter where Connor Bedard or some of these other kids are, but it really will for Jackson Smith.
All right. Let's move on, guys, to our next guy, Braeden Cootes from Seattle. Seattle, not exactly a really good team this year. They just got Radim Murka, who joined them late last week. So that's a good ad for them. But obviously, not exactly a lot of firepower offensively on that team. So Cootes, I didn't really like his game, honestly, at the prospect games. But overall, I like this prospect. I just don't think he had like a really strong 2 games against the Team USA. But hey, that's 2 games. That's not a big deal in the long run. Maybe J.Brad, you can, give us your 2 cents on Cootes. I know you really like this player.
Yeah, I do. And to defend him a little bit on game 2 of the prospect game, he didn't get a lot of ice time. So hard to not impress if you're not out there. I think that was probably my biggest critique of the prospect games, was not rolling 4 lines and getting that 13th guy in there as much. But it is what it is, and it's done now. So yeah, Cootes, future energy center, that guy's out there and he competes. I do really like Cootes, as you said. He's competing hard. He's competing consistently, night in and night out. with the two things I want to see more of, definitely deception in his offensive game. I think he's there and he mentally sees that he needs to do it. It's just pulling it off. So getting to that next step, deception-wise. The other is strength. More strength along the boards and the wall, in front of the net. I definitely want to see more strength out of his game. I think he does have the quick hands, that offensive ability to score, to get a good amount of points. But I want to see more strength out of him. He does go to those dirty areas and he battles hard and battles well, but he's got to get more strength to be more successful of coming out of those. He's also, again, as a center, he's good on the draw. So projecting as a 3C, he's 3C. He's got to be good on the draw, and I feel he is at this point of the season, especially again on a team where he's getting a lot of tough minutes too. So he's playing against the better players on those other teams because he's a lot of what they have. The show really goes through him right now in Seattle, and I think he's taken that pressure really well. He's, I believe, I think they have 2 captains. I think he's captain at home. So it definitely shows leadership to get the C at this level of your development in the dub. Another thing for him, he has good spatial awareness. I talked about his quick hands offensively, but he also does have good spatial awareness in the offensive zone and keeps the play in front of him as well. It definitely on the rush. He's keeping his head up. You know, he's making sure he knows where everybody is on the ice, whether it's with or without the puck. Really good on the penalty kill. He plays all situations. So he's a solid prospect. Again, does he have more? I'm not sure. But it is a little bit difficult to tell right now with what's there in Seattle because it's not much. So again, a big fan of Cootes personally. I think he'd make a good third line center one day who can drive a penalty kill and be very energetic out there.
So with Cootes, I finally have a bit of a comp for him, guys. I think I finally figured out one where I was like, you know what? I love him, and I love this player too. Maybe he's nasty. We'll see. We'll give him time. He has some Ridley Gregg in him. There's some Ridley Gregg going right now. Physical. He's got a motor. He's pacey. He's a primary playmaker, secondary shooter. He's inside driven. He's everything a coach wants. And he's more of a secondary scorer for a team. Like that's how he's going to be. Also in this class specifically, in a very unsafe draft, this kid's safe. This kid's super safe. So that really matters. I think this will be very similar to Jackson Smith, where don't be shocked if a team starts looking at him higher than maybe some people suspect, even though he's considered more of a third liner potentially, because I remember, I've talked to a couple of execs about this class, and one of them reminded me that like this is the reason that teams like want to draft these like supposed third liners, that some of them end up second, first line, end up Swiss Army knifing on your team and going up and down lineups regardless, and you just are guaranteed a player. And again, in this draft, like you absolutely want to take a guarantee. There is no room unless you have like multiple first round picks. There is no room to really swing early, I think. So that's the safety net that Cootes presents for a team and that he presents for the draft.
My comps for him, I think you guys are aware. It was Scott Lawton from the Flyers. So we'll see. If he's, but I think he's pretty tenacious, like Lawton is. Not super easy to play against. I don't know if he's got like that real pass side like Ridley Gregg has. Even Lawton at times can be really, feisty and annoying to play against. I don't know if Cootes has this, but he's a super interesting player. And in this draft, if you can get like a good third line center that's going to give you, I don't know, 35, 40, 45 points per season in this draft in the top 20. I think it's a pretty easy decision for a team, to take him. Next guy, guys, a guy who we rank, I believe, 31st in our rankings last week. If you check his stats line this season, be patient, guys. It's coming because this kid is really talented. But so far, 6 games, 1 assist. But we saw him play at the Olinka even last year as well. Like, he's really, really talented. So Vit Záhejský from Kamloops. Maybe J.Brad, you can start with him, but we think the offense will be there. And, in a draft where there's not a whole lot of high-end offensive skill player, I think he fits, and he's got a legit top 6 upside in my opinion. But he's coming back from a tough injury, so we're gonna be pretty patient with him and let him get comfortable in the WHL.
Absolutely. He, and like you said, incredible at the Hlinka. He really stole the show for me for the Czechs. So yeah, coming off a bad injury and transitioning to a new league as well, and coming to North America and playing in the Dub as a player who's about 5'10" and 170 maybe. So he doesn't have the size, but he does have some dynamic skill. We haven't seen it so much this year, but again, it's been 6 games. He did get an assist the other night. It was pretty good play. But with him, quick decision making, he was really good on the power play. I felt on the Hlinka for the Czech team. Really good puck control in stride. Really good as a rush attacker. So I think in the Dub, he's really going to be able to take advantage of that. He's playing on a team in Kamloops that does have some talent to it. And I'm glad you're listing him as a center and a winger here. He's been playing center lately for Kamloops. So we'll see how that goes with him on the North American ice, because he does play the middle, even with the size, he's not afraid to go there. He's right now on the power play with Kamloops playing net front, which I don't think is his strength. I feel that may not help him throughout the year, especially point wise. I think he's more along the wall, trying to give him a little bit more space to find the open guys. He's got quick hands, so okay, he can probably get his stick on the puck a bit, smacks him in front of the net. But he's getting pushed around a little bit too much, so I don't feel that'll stick. I feel they'll put him in a spot that's probably a little better for him on the wall there. But despite his size, he's not afraid to take hits to make plays, even from the bigger defenders, right? He goes into the dirty areas. He plays really hard. He's pretty aggressive as well in the forecheck. He forechecks deep and he finishes his checks. Doesn't matter who the guy is on the receiving end. I just watched a couple games of him today, and then a couple more this past weekend of him. And again, he's been very consistent with that. Very aggressive player. We talk about creativity. He's a very creative player. Training camp doesn't count for much, but his first move in training camp was pulling off of Michigan in their first scrimmage. So, he's got the confidence, and he's a pretty skilled player. Plays all situations as well. He can get out there on the penalty kill. Again, does he translate to that to the NHL? Probably not. But he does have the aggression, and he is in guys' face. So, he's not necessarily, going to beat anybody up, but he's going to be out there and he's going to be taking pucks off your stick and, taking the puck the other way. So definitely a big fan of this player. Want to see a lot more. And, with Kamloops, he's got guys. So, he'll, as the season goes on, I feel he'll start putting the points up. And,
Yeah, he is the most underrated player in the draft. I'm sure for some of you listening, it's like 1 assist in 6 games. He's not big. Why is he in your top 32? I know for some of you, they think that's A-rated or first round. That's not. It's he would be in our second round. We have an A and B system there, so the top 32 does not mean that he's necessarily a first rounder. That said, I won't be shocked if he actually gets there, depending on his performance down the road here. So he is a top 6 talent, which is rare in this class. So that right there stands out. For instance, he is more talented than Cootes, for everybody listening. He is, next to Justin Carbonneau, for instance, he looks like Pavel Datsyuk off the puck. Like, he's way better defensively than a lot of these other hyper skill kids. J.Brad just mentioned the penalty kill. If he can get bigger and stronger and a bit quicker out there, maybe it's possible. It's something we're going to have to be discussing long term, which again, for a lot of these other hyper skill kids, is not going to happen. So there's a whole lot to like. The problem right now is, as J.Brad mentioned, positional net front power play. That's not going to make any sense. He needs to get off that and get back to the half wall where he should be dominant if given enough runway. The other factor is that, he is used to being able to carve through traffic at will. He's coming from Czechia U20. This is his first opportunity to really ever play in North American ice long term. He is playing in the Dub, which to me is the top league in the CHL right now. And that means he's going up against big, mean defensemen who know what they're doing. He is not accustomed to that. He's using a lot of open ice handling that unfortunately is not going his way. So it's about him acclimating to that. Once he acclimates, starts using his frame better, starts incorporating his teammates a bit more because he is smart, he can do it. Then we're going to start really seeing him cook. And I think a lot of people in this industry are going to have to come around to where we are on him because there's way more here than people think.
Yeah, it was actually pretty funny watching him at the Olympia because all the noise was about Adam Benak, his teammate on Team Czechia. But when we're like discussing him, we all saw Záhejský as more of as a real NHL talent than Benak. Obviously, the size of Benak is the big drawback here, but and Záhejský is not a huge guy either. But we just saw him as a better NHL prospect than Benak at that time, and obviously, it's been a bit of a weird season with the injury and for him, but we're pretty confident he's gonna find his scoring touch in the second half and from now on to until like April, I would guess. So very very interesting player. We bet on the upside of this player, ranking him 31. We could have been a bit more patient, but we really like this player. So the toughest thing to do as a scout is to trust yourself. So we did it this time, and hopefully that one pans out for us. Another guy from the WHL, J.Brad, that we're gonna talk about here is Cole Reschny from Victoria. Maybe I'll let you go on Reschny here.
Sure. So Cole Reschny is a smaller playmaking center out in Victoria, and Victoria not known to have a ton of top level prospects out that way. I don't know if he'll play center at the next level. I feel he's more of a winger, especially he's primary playmaker. To me, primary playmaking, doesn't shoot as much as I want him to. I feel he's probably more of a winger at the NHL level. He's not the greatest skater either as a smaller player, which raises some flags. He does have some quick feet, but again, the skating as a whole is not great. So definitely something he'll have to improve moving forward to get to the NHL. But as a smaller player, he does play the middle. And yeah, of course, he's a center, but some of the smaller guys, even at center, cheat outside. And he won't cheat outside as much as some of the other smaller players will. He helps out a lot defensively, or a lot more than I had seen earlier on in the year. But watching him more in depth out of late, he's really got that two-way game going out in Victoria. And on the penalty kill, talking about his defensive game, he plays high really well and very aggressively. And again, for a smaller guy who doesn't have a reach, he uses his active stick really well. He'll battle, but he needs better results out of it. Again, that's sometimes just due to size, but he'll at least take the battles against the bigger players. And if you're a smaller guy, not as swift of foot, and if you're taking those battles, I'll see that as a positive. I again want better results, but still with Reschny, there's a lot more there than as I've seen coming through the season, as I did earlier in the year. Again, more winger I see at the next level. Top nine, I don't see like any high level offense coming out of him personally. But yeah, especially just as a primary playmaker, I don't know if he'll really keep coming with that shot, but he does have a very good first look. His vision is really good. But I think he's a little limited as well.
I mean, I have not watched him lately except the two prospect games, and my biggest question mark with him were, you mentioned it, the skating for his size, not exactly awesome, and also I thought he was a bit too passive in my viewings so far in the WHL, and that kind of bothers me a lot more. And like I can live with the skating for his size. Like, to some guys that do play in the NHL that don't have like a great size skating combo, but if you combine that with like a low pace, being a bit too passive on the ice, that bothers me. But hopefully he can maybe like improve on that and start playing with more pace and being a bit more aggressive. I really like his game last year at the U17. I thought him and Desnoyers at the U17 last year were really strong for at that tournament. So to say I've been a bit disappointed by his performance so far this year would be a bit of a understatement. Like, I did expect a lot more out of him, but he's still like producing, so that's a good news. Even though maybe he's not playing his best hockey, he's still producing. So let's see if he can improve on some of the weaker part of his game that I saw in some of my viewings so far this season. Brad, do you want to add something on Reschny?
Yeah, so my brain says that, from a technical base, you break down each attribute of the kid, it's like he's fine. Okay, he has a chance. He's smart. He controls the middle, cerebral player, can pass a puck. There's something. My gut says there's way more than something. My gut says this is only starting, and he's not what we're seeing. I feel like we got to give him the second half to get going. I feel like there's way more here, and I can't tell you why. That's why it's a gut instinct. This is why scouting's hard. So, yeah, I just like the sequence we saw where he had the goal there. You saw it live, J.Brad, where he had that fantastic sequence. I feel there's a whole lot more of that coming. I feel like he's just starting to get going again. I don't know what it is this season, guys. I feel like almost every second player we talk about, it's like, yep, they're not doing what they were expected to do this season. It's just the nature of the beast right now. This happened. Last time this happened, for everybody listening, was probably 2022, and that made a lot more sense because that was coming out of the COVID pause. So we're dealing with a lot of kids who had stalled development, and there was a massive second half surge in the 2022 class. This class has the potential for that because of how many of these kids are struggling. Reschny's been one of them where it's like, he's okay, but maybe he's actually pretty good. And that's the thing. We got to be really careful with our evaluations going forward here. Make sure that we stay on top of some of these kids. He's right at the top of the list.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of kids that are in that boat. Ryabkin is one. Frondel is one. I mean, I could go on, but there's a lot of kids that are not playing that well in I would say the first half. It's not really the first half, but 3/4 of the first half, I guess. So I mean, that's why we watch those kids all season long. So we're gonna keep watching Reschny, and another guy we're gonna keep watching is the next guy on the list, and the last guy we're gonna talk about is Blake Fiddler of the Edmonton team in the WHL. Lots of discussion amongst us about this player. We feel like he's getting pretty much, pretty overhyped a bit on like some of those lists. We don't see this player as high as some like other people are seeing him. I just saw that he was on the Team USA selection, roster camp for the U20. I was a bit surprised. I was a bit surprised with that one. I know like maybe on the right side, the Team USA don't have a lot of defensemen, so it might be a reason why he's there. But J.Brad, I'll let you talk about him. You have seen him, more than me, so I'll let you maybe give your scouting report on Fiddler.
Yeah, well, you took the words right out of my mouth. Definitely a surprise for me to see him on the U.S. World Juniors invite list. Honestly, I did not think he had a very good CHL USHL prospect game. Specifically to pick on him, the turnover on, I think it was Murtag's goal. Yep. That was a really rough one, and really highlights what I'm concerned about, the decision making. He overthinks some things, tries to do a little bit too much sometimes, I feel. But on the positive hand, he has an outstanding frame. He's really built for the NHL, this kid. His offense is what it is. I think he projects to be more defensive oriented in the NHL anyways. So the offense, he can transition the puck. He's not going to blow anybody's doors off offensively. He's probably not even really going to do it in the dub, to be honest. But defensively, he uses his stick really well. That's a positive for him. He has the reach and he uses it well. He wins his stick battles. He uses it in his rush defense. He'll corner guys into the wall, use his stick, take the puck, get going. So he uses his stick really well, but to lead into the weakness there is he doesn't use the 6'4", and he's almost 210 now, I think. He doesn't use that physically. And I really want to see him use it because I'm really interested to see how that'll go because he's a pretty good skater. So using that frame and that size, rush defense, getting in on guys in the corner, really clearing the front of the net. I want to see a lot more aggression, physicality out of him because great, you got the stick battles going and that's awesome. That'll do you well at 6'4" with the long reach, but more physicality, more aggression, that'll really do him well. He doesn't have that top end elite skill set offensively, so he's got to work on that defensive game more, in my opinion, to get higher up on lists and then excel in the NHL. He covers a lot of ice defensively, but be more physical. He'll command that space a little bit more for me.
Should I say what I really think?
Yes, you should. You should.
Okay, so this goes one of two ways. Anybody who knows the Fiddlers, don't watch. Either he's a third pairing shutdown defenseman who is like a Tyler Clevin mold long term, even though he does nothing that's like Tyler Clevin yet. You hope to heck the physicality that J.Brad's talking about that's missing starts showing up. He starts getting a little bit nasty net front, becomes a menace. The kid needs to become a menace to be a third pairing shutdown defenseman. His traditional rush defense, I actually think, is probably the best part of his game. He is big. He can skate. His backward skating, his coordination, mechanics, his ability to sync up his crossover mechanics to that of a rush and stay in front of the puck is actually pretty good. It's actually not bad. He can squeeze guys out along boards. He can cut down on angles. He can mitigate risk defensively. So those aspects, I get it. I get why people are interested in this player. However, he's got to be the lowest IQ player in this draft out of any player that anybody cares about, to me, from what I've seen. He can't move a puck. He, as J.Brad said, overthinks the game. I think if he was the only player on the ice, he would still overthink the game. I think it's one of those situations where if he's not a converted power forward, I don't think he plays. And I think he's the Charlie Stramel of this class. No offense to Minnesota. They've done some very good things, and they're on the right course right now. They're doing great. But I had no time for Charlie Stramel. I thought Charlie Stramel was a no draft. I thought he was going to be over-scouted and over-drafted. I didn't think he'd go that high. But this is lining up like a Charlie Stramel situation for me. Now, you obviously give him a bit more leeway because he is a defenseman and he's incredibly raw. He needs a lot of time to develop here, and hopefully he starts picking it up. And admittedly, his playmaking rates and execution has improved slightly from where I saw originally, but nowhere near to the level of where we need to see him long-term if he's going to play in the NHL. You look at Jet Wu, right? Look at Jet Wu in his draft season relative to where Fiddler is. Jet Wu is having difficulty breaking in the NHL right now. Now, you could argue some of that's developmental, and that's fair. But Fiddler definitely falls in the category where I think he is right now will be the Charlie Stramel of defense in this class.
I saw some of my early comps for him was Charlie Elick from last year's draft, where we didn't really have him that high, and he still went, I believe, just at the start of the second round to Columbus, I think 36 overall maybe or something. Anyway, really high in the draft, really not where we had him basically. And I feel like, I don't know our final ranking yet, but I feel like Fiddler will go a lot higher than where we have him. And it's also like I said for Smith, it's not a draft with a lot of defensemen. So if a team has time for him, they might really jump the board here and pick him pretty high. So it's going to be interesting. It's an interesting draft, and it's going to be interesting what happens with Fiddler, because we feel like we are living on our own island here, because everyone seems to really have this kid pretty high on lists, and we are very on the other we are the opposite basically. So anyway, that will wrap up this week episode. Thanks everyone for watching. Don't forget, you can like our video, subscribe to our channel. J.Brad, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for joining us as the first official guest on Scouting Sessions. Thanks for joining us this week, and we'll definitely do that again in the coming weeks, coming months. Thanks everyone, and we'll be back next week for another episode of Scouting Sessions.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks.